guess that a lot of you, like me, have a nativity that is sitting near you right now. And I invite you to think about it or to look at it and to look at who's in it. Your nativity may have some of you may not have put Jesus in your nativity yet because he's not been born yet. Some of you may just have Jesus, Joseph, and Mary in your nativity. Others, like us, may have a menage of animals, and there are numerous people. You may have angels. You may have a star above your nativity. You may have three sort of strange looking folks that we refer to as the three kings or the wise men. And the truth is that this nativity that you have in front of you is a mishmash of stories from the Bible that we associate with this time of year. And so, normally, see, I'm going to be gone on vacation, and I'm always gone on vacation during the time of Epiphany, which is normally when we talk about the the wise men or the magi that came later. But I never get to talk about them, so I am committing liturgical heresy this morning, and I'm going to talk about the magi, since I'll be gone when Jackie preaches that Sunday. Because we do associate the Magi with this time, even though it's important to know that the scriptural traditions that flow in and create our nativity sets are very different. You have the Matthew tradition, the Mattean tradition, and you have the Luke tradition. And both of them have different agendas, even though we like to mishmash them all together. So I'm aware of the mishmash this morning and that I'm contributing to it, and also want to just make you aware of that as we begin, because it's important that we know that as well, even as we enter to it this way. So the Magi, as Roger read to you, in the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, Magi, or the Greek word is magos, from the east, the place where the sun rises, came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." So the east uh, could have been a lot of places. We do not know exactly who these wise men. This is also translated kings later on, so you get three kings. Or I don't know if you notice, it doesn't really say how many here. And in later traditions, there will be many, many more. And what happens, as we've talked about so many times, when one of these Bible stories in the canon does not satisfy us and we want more information, there's this extra canonical literature that rises up where people add names and they add more information, and so later on you get uh you get the names for the wise men. Caspar, Balthasar, and Melchior are their names later on, or you get that there are many more of them, maybe seven or eight of them, because it doesn't say. Most of our nativity sets have three, but it doesn't say that. Notice that. And so these guys could, I say guys, probably guys, could have been from a lot of places. Nabatea is one possibility that scholars have talked about, but the most likely place is from that they were Zoroastrian. And that would have meant that they were from the area that we now know as Persia or Iran. And so they're actually this word magi is used in Zoroastrian tradition to talk about their priests or their leaders at this time. And so we can take a guess that these folks were from there. And the Persian priests were well known for their astronomy, astrology. These were not separate sciences then, and I want you to understand that in the midst of this, these folks would have been priests and judges and astronomers. They would have been doctors. They would have been, because we had not reached a point where science was taking all those things out and separating them. So they would have had a lot of roles. And one of their roles was to pay attention to what was going on in the heavens, in the sky. And they saw something that led them to believe that something very special was happening in Judea. And so they followed it and went to see what was going on. Now, scholars have looked at this in lots of different directions and tried to say, well, maybe this was this alignment of these planets, or, something was creating an extra bright light. We do not know. A few years ago, there was a lineup of planets that folks talked about as, one that occurred around that time, that maybe was occurring again, that we were seeing it. And, but like so many things, we really don't know, but it sure is interesting to think about. And I think it's most interesting for us to wonder why that is so interesting to us. And by that, I mean that it's important for us to think about our own struggle to find meaning and to find words to describe what's going on around us, and particularly how God is at work in the world. I think we're constantly in an effort to do that. That's what the writers in the Bible are doing. They're trying to make sense of how God is moving in the world. God is moving in their context. It's very different than our context. Even the contexts of Matthew and Luke are very different. And so we have to hold all those tensions and be aware of it, when we'd really just like to squish them all together in our nativity set and make it simpler. It's not simple. And so these magi, and I want to say a word about the word the magi. This is from Strong's. A magi, or magian, or mage, is an oriental astrologer, by implication a magician, someone who is adept in wisdom, a wise person whose gifts and wisdom are used in service to the community. A wizard, a sorcerer, a necromancer, that's somebody like a medium who is aware of the deceased and can talk to them. An interpreter of dreams and divination, someone who follows and understands the portents in the heavens, what's going on with the stars. And so, this would have been a complex calling. And this is the word that's used here. Now, this word magos is used a couple of other places in the New Testament, probably most famously in reference to a guy in the 13th chapter of Acts named Simon Magos, who was trying to buy the ability to do miracles like the disciples were. And we get the name for the sin of simony from from him. So that word is used in a very negative way to apply toward him there, and it's used here in a very uh, positive, it seems like, and respectful way. So it's a complex title that probably had to do with your intentions and the way that you chose to work in the work. So there's another really important character in this story that I want to call out, and that is King Herod. Now, in Bible study, we've talked at length about the Herodians and how Herod is such a complex and threatened and evil character. He is responsibility for a lot of murders within his own family. because he was just threatened very easily. So he had his own wife, Mariamne, who he, by all records, loved very much and had her murdered. And so he's an ugly guy. And so when it says in the scripture that he was frightened, and I want you to notice the word terrasso, because if you remember last week when we talked about Mary, we talked about dia terrasso. She was agitated. So she was very agitated, dia terrasso. So today, Herod is frightened, but it's the same word. He's agitated. And I want you to notice that when Herod is agitated, all Jerusalem gets agitated with him because people start dying. So I want you to pay attention to that. Later on in this story, we have the story of the massacre of the innocents. We don't have any historical evidence that this happened, but I tell you what, it would have been in keeping with Herod from what we know about him. Particularly, a lot of this is coming from Josephus. So what we know about Herod from Josephus, he was not a very nice man. So he called together the chief priests and the scribes and tried to find out where this Messiah was going to be born. And they told him the prophecy. This one comes, these Matthew and Luke are full of prophetic quotes from the Hebrew Bible. And this one comes from the prophet Micah that they tell him. I mean, I'm trying to imagine what it would be to be one of these people that's called before Herod to talk about something that's going on. Because if you said the wrong thing, you would probably lose your head like John the Baptist did, which that was a later generation of Herodians that were responsible for the beheading of John the Baptist, too. When Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time where the star had appeared, then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for this child, for when I have found him, bring me word so I may go and pay him homage." Well, they're wise, so they know better. They're going to tread carefully. When they'd heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them was the star that they had seen in the east until it stopped over the place where the child was. Now, this is interesting because we don't know, you know, stars don't operate this way. They don't stop over places, although if you're walking, it can kind of look like that. This has caused some to wonder if this was some kind of light phenomena that was leading them there, some sort of angelic manifestation, that it may not have been a star at all, but something closer. We do not know. Again, we're struggling to find the words for things that are beyond words, so we don't know. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. Chiaro. In Strong's, it means rejoicing, gladness, a salutation, a sense of inner joy and delight. I want you to notice that because there are things, one of the really important tools of discernment we have is to pay attention to what's going on in our bodies when we are around divine energy. When the Holy Spirit is present, we will feel that in our bodies oftentimes. And that may manifest in tears. It may manifest in a sense of peace. It can also manifest in a sense of, I need to get the heck out of here. It can manifest in a sense of joy. If you have ever felt that, you will know it because it's a feeling like no other. Something internal happens and you just know. Clairsentience is what that's called. You just know that you are in the presence of something important and holy. And they feel that in here. We are also called like they are. This is one of the wisdoms they point us to pay attention to what's going on in here, in us. as we discern together. This is going to get very important for us in coming days. It's important for us now because we have so much misinformation around us. We hear all these things and we have to double check and triple check. We need to have that sense of discernment in our hearts. We need to look deeper and to trust what's going on within us. This is one of the wisdoms that the Magi bring us for our present milieu. And I want you to notice that we will take that with us in coming weeks. So they were overwhelmed with joy. They felt this something inside them. They cultivated, and they entered the house. I want you to notice they're in a house. They're not still at the manger. So that's one things that makes scholars think this happened later. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. They opened their treasure chests and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Frankincense, gold is symbolic of power in the world and money. Those with money have power oftentimes. Frankincense is a tree resin that is used in ritual. If any of you grew up Catholic, you know what frankincense smells like, because that's what the priest is swinging in the censer. Those incenses are strong in frankincense. In fact, one of the incenses they use is called Three Kings incense, which is interesting. But there's a that frankincense is symbolic of spiritual vision and calling in the highest frequencies and highest beings and being able to bridge those worlds. And myrrh was used in embalming, which is interesting, and was also used to control pain. It was a painkiller. And so you have all this, and books have been written, and I want to show you one book this morning before we go on that I'll recommend to you if you're interested in all this. Eric Van den Eichel's The Magi, who they were, how they've been remembered, and why they still fascinate. If you're interested in this, is a terrific book that I am drawing some knowledge on this morning. It talks about how this whole veneration of the Magi grew, and in France, there's a whole church dedicated to the Magi. And so there were all these they're fascinating guys, and they have this whole tradition has built up around them. But I want to go back to this internal wisdom joy thing, and I want us to take that into our conversation today. I want to share with you a quote from one of my teachers, Josephine McCarthy. She writes that in the story of the Christian nativity, there are three magi who come to visit, and they give three gifts to the baby Jesus: frankincense, gold, and myrrh. Three magi, who she calls stargazers, who by their very presence either trigger or recognize a fate of becoming as gold. Now, what she's referencing here is alchemy, this idea that we internally can improve ourselves and become more like gold. There was this whole effort back in the day to turn baser metals into gold. And so she's referencing that as a spiritual journey, which is what alchemy also can be. She writes that this is a path of the mysteries, which walked in a priestly way, where the magical person keeps themselves clean and balanced. We're going for balance. We've talked about this before. So the power of the gods can flow through us and out into the world. She writes that such a person is an upholder, a mediator, a bridge, a catalyst, and a load sharer. I love this idea of load sharer. I think it is a terrific way to describe what we are doing as community at United Church of Hayward. We are sharing the load with one another. We are trying to do it with wisdom. We are trying to walk in ways that are holy. We're trying to walk in ways that are wise and embody some of this energy of magos, of the magi. And so if you look at it this way, they become teachers for us about how to share the load and how to walk this journey, not just of Advent, but of this constant giving birth to the light of Christ in the world. We don't just do it once at Christmas, we're doing it every day, always and constantly. This is the wisdom that Mary gives us as Theotokos, as the bearer of God in the world. So I want to end with a word from Eric Van den Eyck, and then we can go into our conversation about this. He says, when we look at the Magi and all the ways they have been understood, misunderstood, and appropriated, perhaps we behold a dynamic complexity that mirrors our own experiences of the world. Perhaps we see in the Magi the profound messiness of human existence and the mystery and the beauty so frequently found in it. Boy, we are living in messiness right now, aren't we? Does your life feel messy? You wish it was different. You wish something about it could be different. I want you to be able to find that chiaro, that joy, that sense of connection to the divine that the wise men point us toward in this story. I want you to be able to find that on the journey, even when it's ugly, even when it's messy, even when there's family chaos at Christmas. That is my prayer for you this morning. Amen.